Hello, everyone, and welcome. Really excited about this event, our State of AI in UX and Product Design. We're gonna, we're joined by some great panelists, from our network of instructors and mentors. I'm Cam. I'm VP of Growth here. I'm just kind of facilitating this with our panelists. Joined here also by Rudy, who's on our admissions team. Wave, Rudy. We're gonna do full intros of the panelists, so I won't get to that just yet. But really excited. We have a lot of folks registered for this event. So yeah, excited for kind of all the conversation. I think a lot has changed in the last 10 months since we did one of these. So excited to dive into all that. Right before we do, a couple of housekeeping things. If you wouldn't mind, just in the chat, tell us who you are, where you're dialing in from, maybe your role, share whatever, introduce yourself super briefly if you want. It's good to just know who's in the crowd. We can see your email, the admins can see your email addresses, but it's cool to not feel like we're talking into the void. Hey, Eric from Norwalk, Connecticut, also first in the chat. Congrats. And then during the actual event, if if you want to just give thumbs up, throw emojis, do whatever, that's cool. You can do that in the chat, but if you have questions that you want us to specifically talk to, drop those in the questions tab so that we keep track of those. I think you can upvote them. We'll try to handle as many of those as well. Some of those we may do in the moment. Some of those we may do at the end if they don't fit into exactly what we're talking about. Great, I see there's a lot of intros. Rhode Island, Los Angeles, we got Brazil, we have an international group, Nigeria, Barcelona. Hey, everybody. Cool. All right.
To see it. Also, feel free to, if you want to connect with one another after today's session. I know folks often like to be able to share LinkedIn information. We love to see the engagement and love to run these events because it's a great way for you all to connect with your fellow design peers as well. So feel free to do that. I'll let you finish with our agenda, Cam.
Here's the run of show. We're going to do, just because we promote this on social, we have some folks. I'm sure we have many students or alumni in the audience. We probably have some folks who are less familiar with Designlab. We're going to do a quick little intro to who we are and some of our courses. Talk a little bit just about the survey. I'll give you guys all the links so you can have it. You can look at all the data. Then we will dive into intros and the panel discussion. That'll be the meat of the event. And any questions we don't get to, we'll try to get to as many of them as we can at the end. That said, we'll turn it over to Rudy for a really quick introduction on Designlab before we get going.
Absolutely. And I'm going to quickly answer An's question that just came through because it's a great one. I'm sure many people want to know. We are recording today's discussion. Because you registered for this event, you will automatically receive the link to the recording in your email right after we wrap up today. So yes, you'll absolutely have that, and you can share it with colleagues as well. That said, if there are more questions that come up as we're going along, please don't drop them in the chat because, as you can see, that's getting very busy with other general messages and conversation. If you put them in the questions tab, which is just next to the chat tab in the lower right, that helps us keep track of them, and we can make sure that we address them and incorporate them into the discussion. Okay. Super brief intro about Designlab for those of you who maybe aren't super familiar with us yet. Designlab was founded back in 2013, and we have been running online courses related to digital design for over a decade. Since the very beginning, we've really focused on providing extremely high quality educational experiences that bring all the flexibility that comes with an online format of learning, and connecting that with the really crucial insights and supports that come from working directly with an industry expert. And to date, we have had more than 25,000 students who have enrolled into one of our many different courses and programs or participated in trainings that we run in order to launch or to advance in their careers in the field of UX, UI, and product design. And all the amazing success that we've seen of folks in our programs and their ability to do so is very much powered by our network of hundreds of expert mentors, people who are actively working in design all across the globe for companies that span pretty much every industry and sector that you can think of. We're super excited to be joined by a few of those really amazing, long-standing Designlab mentors today, who you're going to get to know and hear from a little bit more. But I think that sets the stage generally for what we do here at Designlab. I also wanted to briefly mention that, we're here talking about the state of AI and UX and product design. Designlab has a number of offerings that specifically speak to how working UX and product designers can be leveling up their skills with AI. So we have our AI for UX design course, which we actually co-created with Chrissy, who's here today, which is all about sort of how you can incorporate AI end to end throughout the entire design process in order to work more efficiently and be able to spend more time focusing on the really kind of strategic, important creative design decisions that humans should absolutely still stay very much in the driver's seat of in our more AI informed world. Then we've got our AI prototyping camp, which Jacques, who's also here on today's call, is also one of our key instructors for that program. AI prototyping camp is very specifically tools focused on helping you to master Figma Make and Lovable, which are two tools that have really shot to the top as far as AI powered prototyping. And it's extremely hands-on, tactical, workshop-based format. And then we also have our vibe coding camp, which is a really great sort of complement to AI prototyping camp as well. It goes even deeper beyond just AI powered prototyping and gets a little bit more into the technical side of tools like Cursor, Supabase, Vercel, or V0, so that you can actually learn how to, connect up these designs into working functional apps. So these are programs that we have developed directly related to what we are seeing happening in the field as AI is, evolving and impacting design. We would love for you all to participate in any of these programs. If you're excited, we have a very special discount. I'm going to share some information in the chat. So if you're excited to get involved in any of them, please make use of that information. But I want to make sure that we can really turn it over to the discussion that we're here for today. So back over to you, Cam.
Cool. So Rudy's going to drop in some links. There is she's going to give a promo code where you can save $150 off any of our courses. She's going to drop in some links to some of those ones she just described. So if you're so inclined, I encourage you to check those out. But let's jump into the discussion. Want to just quickly give a little bit of background related to our survey. We did one a little less than a year ago, and so this is the second version of this survey. We surveyed over 200 UX and product designers. Just the survey closed December 30th, so it's super hot off the presses. We pushed and created this report right away. Included a wide range of companies from startups to Fortune 500, ICs, managers, heads of design. So really spanned a wide gamut. And then what our report did actually is looked at themes, looked at the data year over year, and pulled out not just the quantitative data, but also what are people saying in relation to this topic. I am going to also drop a link in the chat here if anyone wants to follow along. It is in our CMS gives these really long links, but here it is. If you want to click that, you all have access to that. And for our conversation today, we'll talk through kind of any of the data, so you don't have to look at it right now, but it's there for you. And I'll drop that again at the end, just so you have it. All that said, let's dive in to intros with our three panelists here today. First, and if you are a panelist, then if you could go on camera and just move your arm so people see who you are. First is Christian Eccles. Christian is a product designer at CNN with experience spanning user experience design, design strategy, research and development, and product strategy. He works across the full product development lifecycle, consults with AI startups, and serves as an adjunct professor at Santa Monica College. He has been a mentor with Designlab since 2021, supporting designers as they build practical skills and confidence in their craft. I believe, Christian, you mentor UX Academy. You also mentor our AI for UX design course, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Great. Welcome, Christian. Next is Chrissy Welsh. Is the VP of Experience at KPN and the instructor and creator of Designlab's AI and UX design course. She has over 20 years of experience across fintech, health tech, e-commerce, digital product innovation, and AI. She's a design thinker, innovator, and creator. She aims for clarity, simplicity, and consistency while leaving space for fun and surprising details for users. Her previous work includes being UX director at ING Analytics and global UX directors at Deloitte and Philips. And last but not least, we have Jacques. I'm going to try it. Debonair. Did I do it right, Jacques?
Yes.
I did, great. Is a senior manager of UX at Lowe's, where he leads UX strategy and digital innovation. Previously, he was a lead product designer at Lowe's, a UX manager at LendingTree, and a product design manager at Bread Ventures for Amex. He's also designed for brands like ADT Security and Ingersoll Rand. He is a longtime mentor at Designlab and an instructor for both our AI prototyping camp and vibe coding camp programs. Welcome all. At that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen so we can see our panelists a little bigger. If I can figure out how to do that. All right, here we are. Okay, so I want to jump right in. So, one of the things I think we saw in this year's survey that wasn't particularly surprising is just people are using AI more than they did a year ago, right? How integrated designers were with AI. Specifically, now nearly half of all designers cited that AI tools and workflows are kind of moderately or extensively integrated in their process. Again, I don't think that that's a surprise. But two questions for the panelists. First, interested, just in your kind of lived experience and what you've seen either with students or in your actual workplace, what that last year has looked like. What's been put in place that wasn't there previously, and then also kind of looking forward, interested to know whether you think that this is a line that keeps going in the same direction, whether it accelerates or whether it plateaus. Like, are we going to be here a year from now and kind of the biggest group we see, the plurality were folks who say that AI was moderately integrated. Curious if that if a year from now everyone's going to say it's extensively integrated, or are there parts that are going to be harder and now we're going to hit diminishing returns and a plateau. So I guess to summarize, what has your lived experience been vis-a-vis that shift over the last year, and where does it go from now? Does it accelerate, kind of stay on the same trajectory, or plateau, and why? If anyone wants to start.
I'll start. I live in a couple worlds. I live in a very corporate design culture, and in that world, I'm concerned that adoption isn't fast enough, and there's a lot of bureaucracy around that, and there's obviously technology security concerns, but I'm concerned that the gap between design, engineering, and delivery isn't shrinking. And that's for multiple reasons, which we can get into. But and then I work with college students, and I work with AI startups, and like house is on fire in a good way. It's aggressive. I'm really glad to see the vibe coding course that's being offered. It's centered around that, and I see the role of the designer. Everything's moving upstream with AI in terms of the design process, and the designer's role is I see the role being more about vision and storytelling and user understanding, and making sure that the guardrails are in place for the ML to produce testable designs. So yes, I see this, I see two very different worlds, and I don't see a plateau. I see big corporations that are adopting are going to risk. There's a lot of risk in not doing that.
Chrissy?
Yeah, I can back up that sentiment, and I think there's a couple of drivers behind all this, because nothing happens in isolation and nothing happens on its own. So when we're seeing these acceleration of AI tooling, not just for design, actually AI tooling for everyone, it's because there's a couple of reasons why it's being driven. I mentioned a couple before in the private chat we had earlier, and that is they're being released en masse by enterprise companies. So now that the fear is kind of coming over it, and we're getting past that zeitgeist of putting the gates in place, you're seeing Microsoft Copilot being rolled out through the Microsoft Enterprise Suite. We're seeing Gemini integrated for free inside their web browsers, and because of the prevalence of it and the barriers being removed to actually its usage, you're starting to see it being incorporated much more. And so that means that as designers, we're not just designing for using it for ourselves in our own workflows, we're also seeing many other disciplines around us, the PMs, the POs, the developers, they're also using tools to also help them do their jobs. And so we've kind of got this equilibrium also happening at the same time, where we have to also match the other people around us who are also using these tools. And so we have a role to play in using them, but we also need to understand there's so many other people also using different tools around us, and it's just about making sure that we also don't fall behind in our discipline, but also putting our own humanity in the same role to check that what we make is actually good for people. And I think when we talk about the role of design, that's our changing role, is actually to be some of the checks and measures against what we create and put out for human consumption, as well as AI consumption, but I'll talk about that later if anyone asks me. But I'm also interested in what Jacques thinks, because you're also at the forefront of this. So what are you seeing, Jacques?
Yeah, good question. So I would say back to what Cam mentioned earlier, a year ago, from what I'm seeing, it was all about exploration. Like, hey, we have access to these new tools. Companies were slowly adopting the enterprise GPT, and it was more just a, hey, see what you can do. But now it's like, okay, this is more of an expectation. Companies are investing heavily into these tools, so it's no longer just a, hey, can you use this? You're expected to use it. And I'm assuming people, leadership is tracking the usage of those tools, because they're not going to invest in it if no one's using it. So that's the first thing I'm noticing. And then also a year from now, I'm hoping to see better, clear lines of ownership. So for example, we have all these AI tools that are helping people do each other's jobs. Essentially, we have the triad model between PM, UX, and engineering. We have, PMs and UXers learning Windsurf or Cursor, right? Like these AI coding tools. So PMs and engineering are now getting into development type of techniques. We have the other way around, where UXers and PMs and engineering are using Figma Make now. So we're all learning each other's tools. And then the engineers and the UXers are using ChatGPT and other tools to kind of help them with product thinking. So we're all doing each other's jobs in this very gray area between what we're all seeing and doing. So I'm hoping that a year from now, we have better lines of ownership and understanding, okay, now that we have these tools, where do we draw the line? The last thing I'll say is, I'll stop it there, and then we'll see what the rest of the panelists have to think about that.
Great. And I guess, Christian, I think you mentioned this explicitly. You think that, hey, the growth and adoption is going to keep on the same curve or accelerate. I'm curious, Jacques and Chrissy, your opinion, are you guys of that same mind? Or, I think one perspective is, okay, there are some parts that AI is going to not be good at for a long time, and therefore, once you get to those parts, it's, adoption slows. Or do you think, hey, we're not even close to that point yet?
This is interesting, because I have two thoughts about it, and both of them are at some different ends of the spectrum. I think for some things we're seeing, right, our role, and I agree with Jacques. First off, I think that and I wrote this actually into the question answers in the chat. We're seeing an expansion of our roles, which is we're seeing that we're having to take on sometimes some business roles and some other things inside the organization, as well as making sure that other people understand how we get to the answer that we're getting to. And I think what we have to, or what will not replace us, and I said it before, is the humanity and human element of what we've got to bring out. And AI is going to be very good at generating design solutions that will do that for a very long time, even up to mostly production level ready. I think I've seen a question about that. And you can release prototypes that are slightly buggy and some other things in it. Production level is an interesting term, because it means that it's got an acceptable level of bugs that are not going to be in there. And I think in some cases that's problematic for generating code with, because you need to check that in all situations and even edge cases to make sure it's production ready. And I don't think the generation tools are quite there yet. But where I see them taking over and doing work is they help us do expansion of thinking and generation and creation. And what they're not good at is, we have to understand a lot of the time they're predictive models. They're not models that understand. They predict based on information that we give it or references to data that we provide it. And then they generate the most likely result off of that. They do not understand what is being given. And I talk about this in AI and UX course, is that it's based on a previous amount of information that these models have been created on, which means that if it hasn't existed, let's say I talk about neurodiversity, for example, part of the course, where if you are if you do not behave in a normal way in an app or as a user, and it hasn't been documented, it isn't been trained into the models, then it's not going to generate for that. That's a human thing that we have to bring to the table. So that is what I mean. If it hasn't existed and it hasn't got a name, a term, and these models have been trained on that information, then it's not going to be built in. And there's, even if you generate pictures or even images, you will get a lot of marketing style images. They don't look like regular people, they look like models, because most of the information that's out there on images is marketing style images based on people who look like models, because they are models. And so that's what it generates. But models don't understand what real humans look like. And that's what I'm talking about. So the reality versus the information that's out there, that's our role to play. And I could talk about this for hours. I'm going to cut myself off, guys, and I'm going to let someone else talk about it, because I'm going down a rabbit hole of our role and what we have to play, because it cannot predict what it doesn't know. And I think that's where we'll hit the wall with some things.
Kind of shifting topics a little, but kind of still staying within I think the general theme of how adoption has changed. We did a part of the survey talked about tool usage. So last year, what you saw, a big chunk of people were using ChatGPT, and then you had a long tail of small percentages. I think ChatGPT, not surprising, still number one, and in fact, more people use it than they did last year. I think it's in the 80s. I think what is surprising or what is new is that there's a kind of strong second tier of tools that a lot of people are using. Most notably, Figma Make went from 0 to 70%, right? And and there's probably a distribution has a lot to do with this. Obviously people are using Figma, and so now a lot of people are using Figma Make. I think the other kind of maybe more interesting even group were just a lot of other LLMs, right? So people are using multiple LLMs because it adds up to well more than 100%. So they're kind of using them for different purposes. Curious, like what your guys' stack looks like in terms of thinking about, kind of tools that essentially do the same thing, but picking different ones for different tasks. And then second, with tools, curious if, any of you have a perspective on, hey, prototyping seems to be the big thing that went from not many people were doing it to now explosive usage. Is there another part of the design process that is ripe for that kind of disruption or integration of AI that's currently not, doesn't see the kind of usage that, prototyping or, creating text or research do?
I can go next. I would say synthetic user testing is one of those things that's more emerging and probably less adopted at this point in time. Basically running a simulation of real users based on a persona and seeing how those simulated users respond to various scenarios, whether it be validating an idea or even, running some prototypes by it. So giving it some static screens and letting that respond to it. So that's definitely usable. I mean, possible today. You can even have ChatGPT pretend to be your personas and give it the personas and give some screenshots and ask it to respond back. I've also seen some unmoderated user research platforms that are AI driven. So rather than a human doing a moderated study saying, hey, how do you feel about this, right? You have an AI prompting the participant to give responses. And so I think that's pretty early days. I've spoken with some researchers who, have mixed opinions on it. But I think those are the more early days ways to leverage AI that are kind of still being worked out, as opposed to the more widely adopted tools like Figma Make.
Yeah, I'm going to echo that. I'm seeing a lot of that, the artificial testing and using persona and UX research to create an agent that you can run scenarios with, that be it like UX scenarios or further exploration. But I'm seeing a lot more of that in like the AI startup space. I still think that like for quality control and sanity checks, and humans need to test it. But up until that point, I'm seeing like aggressive action in that space, and that's from like the UX to the coding spectrum, like AI agents reviewing code against each other to make it more streamlined. Personally, I think this may be part of your original question, but primarily I'll use OpenAI for communications, mostly out of habit. It was the first tool that I used, and it understands the buckets of projects that I work on and the people involved. So it understands the projects better. But if I'm working for something that's like UX exploration, I'm starting to use Google Stitch a lot. I'm using Figma Make if it's plugged into something like Jira. And then I'm using a lot of Claude. So, and Google Gemini, because they have a tool that's called Anna Banana. But yeah, anyways, regardless, so I'm using a lot of these tools.
Kristen?
Well, I love Jacques. I feel like I want to give you a big hug because I thought I was the first one doing it, but I'm not, which is actually really nice because it means it's confirmed something to me that I'm on the right track. I built a synthetic user panel for KPN, and I talked about it in one of my demos. I had to do it. I had this big gap in my user structure, which I couldn't fill because they were professional people aged 30 to 45, and I could not get them into my forum. I could not get their time. I could not pay them enough money to come and talk to me. So I actually had to build these synthetic users. And she's called Sana DeFries. If anyone's interested, I could show her. She runs on Microsoft Copilot, Copilot Studio that we built her in. And she's fantastic. And she allows us to do this kind of testing. That's where we're seeing some of the groundbreaking elements of what's coming new, that's coming inside service design and testing and those kind of areas. And so I love that for our industry as well, in our area in design. Other areas I'm seeing AI taking over or starting to be something really interested is in testing and evaluation. I seen my first round of AI run testing on designs, and it was so beautiful to see it. And Stitch does something really nice. They do a heat map analysis of its generations. So you can actually generate stuff in there, and you can see roughly where the eye tracking and where the attention is going to go. So it gives you some information if you want to adjust that attention map or not. And all these kind of really great plugins and tools that are coming out, I think, is where we're seeing some of the advancement. And for my own LLM stack, I'm just going to talk about LLM stack because my actual real stack is quite extensive. So if I limit myself to LLMs, I am golden handcuffed into Microsoft Copilot. So that's the first one I have to talk about because it comes with the Microsoft suite and it's what we actually have to use. So, and it has the benefit of actually having these enterprise LLMs is they have access to all your company information. That means when you generate off of it, it has access to all those PowerPoints in the back. Interesting fact, our board members didn't actually have their security locks in their PowerPoint, so we were able to pull information from our Copilot LLM into whenever we queried the future of what KPN is going to do. And then all this reference material was coming in. They've since fixed it. But it was an interesting experiment in how you actually lock information. Second one's Claude, the usual suspect, Claude Perplexity. And I pay for these licenses in Copilot. I use them for different things. And I have to give an honorable mention to train GPTs. I use Scholar AI quite extensively, purely because I really like being able to query for peer-tested information. So I don't like whenever you query ChatGPT sometimes or other LLMs, it brings back some weird reference points, especially if you list the references or sources. It comes back with like Medium articles and other things. And you're like, this is just conversational information. It's not rooted in fact or rooted in scientific rigor. So I also like to use Scholar AI because it has access to the whole databases of Scholar articles, and then it gives me better reference points. So props to Scholar AI if you're using it. Part of the ChatGPT AI materials. You can also use Consensus, but I prefer Scholar AI.
While we're on the topic of tools, just before we leave here, I'm just going to share the little part of the survey, and you guys all have the full link for this, but this is kind of the tool stack, and maybe it's too small for people to read. Let's kind of zoom in here. So this were the percentages. You can see obviously ChatGPT is still the leader, but a huge gains for Figma Make. You see a lot of these other LLMs, with pretty substantial usage. There was a question or two in the chat, I think, about specific tools for synthetic users, et cetera. But curious from the panel, are there any tools that you guys swear by or that are important parts of your stack? And Chrissy, you just mentioned a few. I guess maybe Scholar AI is embedded in these, but that you would call out for the audience. I think people always love to hear recommendations of workflows or things that or tools for them to check out that maybe they're not currently using.
One that I'm going to just mention, and then I'm going to be quiet. Gamma app is the one that saved me almost a massive amount of time. It generates presentations. You can feed it reports or information, and it will create presentations for you. You can structure it. It generally saves me days of effort and work putting together presentations. I generally have to do a lot of stakeholder meetings, and this saves me a ton of time. I love it.
Fun fact: we did a I think presentation with maybe the person who was the first designer at Gamma, and they were a UX Academy grad, and then they were, I think, the first designer at Gamma App. Anyways, any other recos that you'd throw out?
Yeah, Magic Patterns. If you work in a more mature design system, it can connect your design system, and it produces pretty high quality initial screens. So use it following the rules of the design system, but you have to have a really tight design system. Padding, radius, all of it, margins are all defined. But Magic Patterns.
Cool. And I'll refer to Maze. We might have, a lot of people here probably heard of Maze already, but they do have this AI moderator feature that I was referring to. That can basically pretend like a human and prompt the participant to go on to the next step and give their feedback as they go throughout the process. So
great. Switching gears a little bit to kind of from stack and how much people are using it to challenges. I think last year the theme was very much like, do the tools do what I want them to do, and do I know how to use them? And I think that the big theme now is people understand how to use them, but there's quality, trust, risk issues. Over half of designers in the survey said they're concerned AI could negatively I'm not still sharing my screen. Okay, no. Could negatively impact design quality, even when the outputs look polished. Curious how any of you, personally assess whether AI is improving quality or quietly degrading quality. Curious your thoughts on how you approach quality in this world where you can very quickly create things that look pretty decent. And is that a challenge that you guys are directly addressing in your orgs?
Yeah, AI can make weak UX look very polished. Judgment, taste, and accountability. It's the responsibility of the designer and the product manager and everybody involved, but primarily the designer involved. So I would say, wait, what? Can you repeat the initial question?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of people feel like are worried about quality, given how quickly AI is being adopted and how it's able to make things that kind of superficially look good. So how are you guys addressing and kind of directly facing this in your orgs or in your work?
Yeah, you have to understand the challenge. You have to be involved. You have to pay attention during, like, if it's like in a corporate environment, like all the stand-ups, what everyone's working on, work as a team. You have to understand the product. So otherwise it is going to produce polished, weak UI or UX. So yeah.
Jacques and Chrissy, has this been something that you guys have thought about in your orgs or less so?
yes, I'll start with Lovable. We all know how Lovable can make things look nice and shiny, but they all have the same icons and the same gradients and stuff. Every website that you can generate from Lovable typically looks like that a lot of times, unless you spend a lot of time building out the styling and stuff. So I will say beyond that, drawing the boundaries. So I referred to earlier how we're all crossing between the triad model, UX, PM, and engineering. And you can't just have, a PM hop into Figma Make, spin up something and call it ready for dev handoff, right? That's not going to be good enough. We still need to have UX experts come in and do it the right way, right? Like understand, are we using all of our typography tokens? Are we using all of our color tokens? Are we, following best practices like the heuristic principles, all that stuff? There's still a lot of, our expertise is still needed there to make sure that it's ready for dev handoff. Or you can't just have, a non-technical person, like maybe somebody who's primarily focused on UX or PM to hop into Cursor and Windsurf and just spin something up and expect it to be production ready for like a large enterprise company. That's not going to be, secure. That's not going to have, not only the, the bugginess that Chrissy referred to earlier, but the security measures in place, right? You're not following your enterprise architecture from an engineering standpoint. So I would say drawing those boundaries is really how you protect the quality, because otherwise, the folks who have that expertise are no longer in the picture to block those things from happening and going into production. So yeah, just drawing the lines of ownership and understanding the limitations of the AI tools and letting the experts have that final say before you ship to production.
I love that. I think I'm only going to add one small thing, and that's what was helpful framing for my team actually, whenever we started using these tools on the regular, on the daily, was treat it like treat viewing what you're creating like you would whenever you were looking at a junior designer's work. You don't expect a junior designer to go and release to production and wave them goodbye and say, hey, good job, see you later. You check it, you look at it, and you check for the consistency and the standards that Jacques was talking about. Will it meet the enterprise architecture? Will it meet, is the right components used? Are they linked? Is things working right the way it should do? The way you would critique a junior member on your team to help them learn. And when you make the outputs and you still take that same role, just that framing was really helpful for my team, so that you don't look at a very polished output with bad UX and think, oh, well, it kind of looks okay. You put it through the same rigor as you would put through a junior member of your team and go, are they doing this the right way, in a way that we need it to be done? And if not, you fix it, because that's your job as the senior on the team. You fix it. And that's our role, I think.
I think the other two challenges that really came to the surface, and curious with both of these, if how much you guys are seeing these actually play out versus just being kind of theoretical and things to keep an eye out for. The first was homogenization, the idea of like, hey, we're all using the same tools, it's all trained on the same stuff. What differentiates our product? What differentiates us as a designer? And are all these products going to start looking the same? That's one. I think the other is, orgs are having a lot of pressure to do more AI, right? Like whatever that means. And, is that leading to kind of AI theater and doing things just for the optics of it versus actually integrating stuff that moves the needle, makes the work better, makes the work faster, makes people more efficient. Curious if any of you have kind of seen these challenges actually materialize, working, consulting, or with, other folks, or at this point, are these more fears that are not unfounded, but that are kind of more theoretical in nature? And maybe you guys haven't seen it. And again, I think those two, they're homogenization and then, kind of speed AI optics versus.
I can talk about it. I think it's funny because I see the polarization of some things that are happening. I actually can't get the consistency that I really want in the generations inside my own enterprise software. So it's really hard to get the consistency, because I would love it to be 100% consistent and generate. And actually, I still see variation there. So that's something to note. And I feed my team feed Figma Make with our design system inside for the generation, and we seed it with the Figma files that we want to generate off of. And then we use tools to help us. So, and I do a really nice demo in my course where I actually show the same prompt in different tools, and it will give you completely different results. So even though I also see something else happening, where if you prompt badly, the defaults will take over, and that's where things look the same. So if you are really terrible at prompting, I don't want to swear on your beautiful presentation, but if you're terrible at prompting, it's going to show generic, because if it doesn't understand what you're trying to say, it will default back into basics. and therefore you get basic layouts. And then if you get better at prompting with intent, with the features, with the things that you want to actually see, and then you try to seed it with information, getting what you want can sometimes be quite hard. So actually, if you're bad at prompting, you'll get very generic results. And if you really know what you're looking for and you're good at your job, it can be hard to get the results that you want. So it's an art and a skill. And that's the dichotomy of what we face or what my team faces in their job. So no, maybe not the answer you were looking for, Cam, but
no, I mean, it's interesting. You're saying, you know, if you're seeing homogenization, maybe you need to get better at prompting.
I'm going to echo that. I agree. I think that we'll see more of our own version of Uncanny Valley, knowing that the prompt wasn't sophisticated. It was a low level prompt and then delivered. I see some of that in like initial, you know, like maybe on like a prototyping level, or students aren't as engaged in a project. They'll deliver something that clearly was AI generated and not a lot of thought was put into it. So, and that's then my responsibility to call out the holes in that. So I guess I would say that like speed will stop being impressive. You know, everyone's going to be fast. So I think that teams and individuals that slow down intentionally, and they work on the prompts and they understand the problems, you know, at key moments, they'll be able to produce better products that are not so homogenized. So generally speaking, on a delivery commercial level, I'm not super concerned about homogenization. I will see it for designers who don't understand the problem.
There was a comment in the chat from Yvonne who says, where I work, developers and business development people who have no UX background are now generating prototypes. I'm concerned that UX knowledge and practices will become marginalized. It seems like that fear is in some ways related to this fear of homogenization, which all just stems from what I would characterize as like lazy implementation. And what I hear you all saying is, you know, as long as we don't lazily implement these tools, you know, sit back and expect them to fully do their thing, you know, as long as we're very much, you know, actively involved in how they're being used and why, that's how you kind of avoid falling into that trap. I'm curious if you would agree.
Exactly. Using AI as a thought partner, not letting it do all the work for you. And I think that that's where it comes down to. I mean, you know, the comment about folks that are not trained in UX generating prototypes and expecting it to be okay. Like, again, that's what I was talking about earlier, drawing that boundary and understanding, okay, yes, we can do this together. We want to empower everyone to deliver, right? And as a triad, we're all collaborating differently and more deeply, right? Imagine the level of extra communication that you had to do before we had prototypes, before we had clicking, you know, the heat map prototypes, the hotspot prototypes. We could just design a static screen, and then we had to explain all the functionality to the developers. And then we got, you know, the hotspot prototypes where it was easier for them to play around with it and understand. Now we have even more like level of fidelity in our prototypes, and it's way easier to explain the intended functionality. And I think that is really what it comes down to. You know, when someone who's not trained in UX is doing that, they're not going to have all the terminology and all the rigor behind it. And so that's where we come in and we can help kind of, you know, with that design to dev handoff process and ensure that all those best practices are being followed.
Great.
I think what's really interesting,
go ahead.
I think what Jack just said is really interesting. Do you know what's really what's fun about this concept? It's not new. We had this with quite a boilerplate. We had this with low code, no code. We've had this problem for a while where developers were just designing based on the components that came with React, for example, or came out of the box. So it's not the first time we've encountered people taking over the area of design to do these things. We've had this for a while. And, you know, people are sad about it, but it's true, though. It's true. And the thing is, we overcame all that before. We overcame it with education. We talked about the experience mattering in design and that it's not okay for developers to just take over and do the design work. And it's interesting now that we're experiencing the flip reverse, where we're taking over the development work with our release to prototype the way we're doing. So I think the day will come for us where we also get a lesson to not do that work too. So I think maybe, but I think it's an interesting that it's not a new problem. It's just, a reimagining of the same problem, I think, or the same challenge that we've got over again.
Two more topics I want to dive into, then I want to leave 10 minutes for questions. First is one kind of new topic that we delved into in this survey that we didn't touch on the year before, was just not AI for design, but designing AI-powered experiences. Relatively a small percentage said it was kind of a core part of their job. I think something like less than 20%, but 2/3 of folks are. Says my audio device has a problem. Hopefully you guys can hear me. Curious, for the panelists, whether you guys have kind of started delving into designing AI-powered products and experiences, and if so, what changes in terms of kind of the way you go about it, or is it really the same design process just with some new capabilities? Is there anything fundamentally different in your approach when you're designing AI-powered experiences? And then we didn't talk about this before, so curious insofar as you guys are even doing this yet. Maybe
I can
folks
go.
haven't.
Okay, cool. Within our company, we've had some folks doing some research, and I've been doing some independent research as well. So I think a lot of us are learning about what are the new principles of designing an experience that is powered by AI, right? We know our 10 usability heuristics that we all know from like Nielsen Norman and stuff, but now that we have these new interaction models coming from AI tools, there's this whole new set of standards that are being set for building an AI interface. And so I would just encourage folks to do their own research and use, like, be a student, right? So use the tools yourselves and start to understand the established patterns. So when you hop onto Figma Make, you might realize that they redesigned their entry point to look more like the entry point of ChatGPT. And so that's becoming the standard, right? There's like this certain standard with how people are expecting to understand, to interact with the chat. Like there's always usually this little sidebar with the chat box at the bottom, and there's little buttons in the bottom left of the chat box, right? There's these established UI patterns that are being popularized from the major players, and then everyone else is following suit. So I would say just be a student, use all the tools that you can, and start to notice these differences, and then do some research on the established patterns. And then over time, those patterns will be solidified, and that's the expectation that users are having going into these products.
I'm working on 2 products now that are ML driven, and one is more just like the output, the aesthetic design, and that hasn't changed, but right, it's going into A/B tests, so like that process really hasn't changed. But in the startup space, I'm working on a project that is voice focused, and the difference is it's much faster turnaround, but the similarities is that, like, how do we address this accessibility in this space, and how do we do that is primarily being driven right now by my previous experiences designing, addressing accessibility for commercial products. So and whenever I try to use AI to address those issues, I'm not really getting a lot back from it, and maybe that could be the prompting and like the research side. I'm sending it, but so I'm going to say it's very generally, if I'm an overall answer, it's generally the same experience. My level of involvement is different. So use the tools.
Anything to add? If not, that's.
Yeah, I would say that with the voice agents, we're seeing AI voice taking over, and I think we've got some new interesting considerations that weren't there before. Like consent for AI voice is something that we're exploring now with our customer service centers, because if they don't consent to talk to a computer, I think that's problematic. So we're exploring new areas of consent with AI, which is something when you're designing for AI systems and interaction of people with AI to get information. Security and consent are 2 of our biggest concerns. I think those are new for how we, as designers, take on the responsibilities. And we do have new responsibilities. That's really interesting for us. We've got to make sure that we design in ways that ensure our users are both safe and are having a good experience with what they're doing. And we have a very important role to play in those in our new responsibilities. That is.
Thanks. So okay, well, this kind of question and theme, then want to open it up for there's a bunch of questions and that you need the questions. You know, obviously.
Hey, Cam.
Yeah.
Something seems to be going on with your audio. You sound like you're underwater. Does everyone
I
else
don't know.
also hearing that? Okay, yeah, it's not just me.
Well, let's.
It's a bit clearer
Oh.
now, I think. Yeah, that's much better.
Okay. Well, I won't talk too much. That way you don't have to hear my underwater voice. So one the last kind of theme in the survey I want to talk about is just, you know, kind of what this does for the job market, what this does for the space for people who are career focused. Obviously, one of Designlab's programs is UX Academy for people going into the space, and then many of our other programs are folks who, you know, want to move up, want to get promoted, want to excel in their career. What we saw is folks aren't yet seeing, you know, team changes or anything like that on account of AI. However, there's a good amount of anxiety about it, and you know what happens next. Curious, you know, from the panelists, if folks want to future-proof themselves, if folks want to kind of be well positioned in the years ahead, you know, yes, you have to learn AI tools and workflows, but what are the non-AI skills? What are the kind of things other than just making sure they're students, as you put, Jacques, and continuing to learn these things that you would have folks focus on, you know, in an AI powered world? Or if you're hiring, what are the things that you're looking for? Are they the same things that you've always looked for, or have you shifted in some way because now, you know, AI can do that? So curious, if a person wants to future proof themselves, where should they double down and spend their time other than learning AI stuff?
I'm going to quickly start, and I would say that the art of business is still something that is incredibly important because it's how companies make money. And you've got to understand deeply, how does your company or the people that you work for, how are they making their money? And making sure that you understand the business. And when you do that, you can understand how to serve your users in a good way that allows them to exchange money for a service or a product that they're really looking for. And I think that's something that we shied away from a little bit in design, just because money is dirty and we shouldn't be thinking about it, because it's all about the betterment of humanity and users. And I would say that that's something I think, if you want to future-proof your career, understand how business works. And then how do users fit into that flow, and how do you help them? Because that makes you come up with better ideas. The second thing that was really interesting, you said, how do you future-proof your skills? This is not I feel really privileged because I've got 20 years in the industry, and I'm showing my age now, but I did start when I was 18, so you can forgive me a little bit for that. Excuse me. But in those 18 years, I started in Microsoft, and Macromedia Director, when we made CD-ROMs. I don't know if anyone remembered that era. Whenever designers used to make CD-ROMs that used to go out, and the products used to live on that, they used to go in your machine, it used to come out. Guys, we've moved on from that, right? And then there was things, technology, advancements, designs, it changes. And remember Flash? Who ever designed in Flash? Right? Okay, and now I'm like getting all nostalgic. But I'm just saying things move on and it happens. And we had the same discussions then about what does it mean to not be on CD-ROM anymore and have products that exist in browsers? What does it mean to have applications that run on your machine and not via a double-click executable? These things are all things you adapt and you change, and that's the nature of it. UX didn't even exist as a term until like 2020 or 2005, 2010, something like that. Our job titles will probably change again in another 5 to 10 years, and we'll be called something else. And that's okay, because the core of what we're doing is still creating beautiful things for people to use. And it's always been the case. And so then there, I would say, it's part of the nature of evolution that we'll go through another cycle. Don't fear it. I've done it already twice myself. I'm much prepared. I know what's gonna happen. And the trick is keep your skills up to date. Don't ever lose them. Learn business, keep your skills up to date, and understand that if you want to be a designer, it means living the cycles of things that happen. All right, I'm going to get off I see some floppy disk in the chat. The first floppy disk I used when I was a kid, do you know it was like this size? And it was on a BBC machine. I'm just putting that out there. Okay, that was in the 80s, man. All right.
Jacques or Christian, anything to add?
I'll add. just as Chrissy mentioned, understand business and business strategy. I'm going to add understand product strategy, understand product. There's so many books about product. O'Neill writes so many books about this, and you can message me if you want some understanding of that. But yeah, understand how product works, gets developed. What are the roles of the teammates? What are their priorities? How does that fit within the business? But then like the day-to-day, like what can you be doing today? Design system. Design system will not just be UI. It's going to include behavior. It's going to include tone and uncertainty handling and failure states. And it's going to be more than just like, what does the form look like when it's invalidated coming through or what have you. So I would focus from a portfolio perspective, connecting like showing that you have a deep understanding of design systems and where is AI in that space.
Cool. And I'll add to that. I would say what makes us future-proof ourselves as professionals that's not AI related, right? I would say focusing on the foundational design skills, because I know we said not AI related, but it leads into AI. Your foundational UX skills and the tool. So like I said before, using all of your typography tokens, using all of your components correctly, building the component properties correctly, the color tokens, all the variables, doing those basic things the right way will lead to better design to code generation in the tool. So whether you're just building it as static screen or prototype the old way with the noodles, or building it and take it to the next step with Figma Make, those foundational skills really prevail and make you stronger no matter what. I'll say that. And secondly, being willing to branch out. So we've talked about business and product, but there's also the tech side of things. So I personally skew more towards the tech side, but a lot of the UX people that I work with are skewing towards product, and they're maybe considering, oh, should I switch to product now that product folks are doing UX things? Maybe that's the best of both worlds for me. Me, on the other hand, I would go the other way around. Oh, is there like a UX engineering role out there? I would just say, be willing to explore your UX professional skill set with the inclusion of some product skills or some tech skills, and that'll really future-proof yourself. And you can really understand the full end-to-end process. Even without AI, I would say that's a good idea to do.
Cool. Great. Well, thank you so much. Do you want to take a couple questions, panelists? If we go like 2 minutes over, are we okay? Cool. So we'll do 5 minutes of questions. I'm going to look at some of the ones that were upvoted. Sean here asked, I've been hearing that you all have been using tools independently. How are you using AI tooling to complement each other? I.e., I've been reverse prompting in ChatGPT to provide a prompt that I could use for Lovable and V0, etc. So I think the nature of the question is kind of using tools in an interactive way in order to kind of unlock better usage of other AI tools.
Yeah, reverse prompting all the time. If you don't understand how to do it, reverse prompt it, ask the AI, find an example, upload it to the AI, ask the AI to break it into a better prompt. Or if you use 2 different MLs, you can ask the ML to frame a prompt for Figma Make, and it will start to bridge those gaps. So that's like such great advice is to ask an AI agent to reverse prompt.
We'll just go on and just chime in if you have anything to say on any of these. Alexandra asked, this was upvoted a bunch of times, do you think there's been an increased need to advocate for the UX craft with the integration of AI within client teams that aren't designers? Do some stakeholders perhaps have an unrealistic timeline due to the perceived speed that AI can offer our workflows?
I would say we've always had to advocate for UX to have a seat at the table, so that's nothing different. But yes.
Yeah, I'm just going to what Jacques said. It's a yes, but also we've always had to talk about experience as a differentiator and trying to sell it as something that's important to people. So I don't think that role is going to change. I think that's still part of what we have to do on the daily.
Yeah, that's not a new challenge.
No. It's an old challenge dressed up. It's the old floppy disk dressed up as a new AI tool. I'm telling you.
Hadil asks, any advice or tools that are best in assisting to build an atomic design system coming from a UX UI team of 1?
I would ask you first why you would want an atomic design system if it's only you using it, because it might be a bit of a hammer for in that situation where you're creating a whole design system. Usually those design systems by their very nature are for ease of use for multiple people. And if you're the only one using it, I might be bold and suggest maybe that's too much for one person, but maybe other people in the panel have a different idea, or can suggest a tool.
Are you saying the question is, could you repeat the question about building an atomic design system for
Yeah. Do you have any advice or tools that are best in assisting to build an atomic design system? I'm assuming they mean AI tools coming from a UX UI team of one.
I mean, I've seen many LinkedIn posts talking about how they're using Claude Code to help, do design work, right? So when you're, not to get too in the weeds right now, but when you go into the Figma MCP, when you go into like Windsurf or Cursor, you can actually set up what's called like an API token from Figma, and then you can bring it into those AI tools, and then you can select read or write. So essentially, if you select write, those AI tools can go into Figma and build things, as opposed to taking the things from Figma and building them in code. So at that point, yes, I've seen people using Claude Code and actually speeding up their production of design system components in Figma using those write functionalities within the MCP. So yeah, you can do that. We don't have enough time to talk about that right now, but yes, it's definitely possible. And I've seen people doing it on LinkedIn before.
I've seen people using the Figma plugins to, when you create the design, to run a generation on the Figma plugin to actually create the components based off of the design. So if you start with the design and then run the plugin over it, it will create you the components. That's a quick way of getting a version of a system in, but you still need to check the system that you're creating via the plugins.
Mm-hmm.
Last question I see that has an upvote. Can you get thorough, not just basic stuff like contrast, accessibility testing done with Figma Make, Lovable, Cursor, or do I have to use a tool like, I don't know how to pronounce, Deque, DEQUE, DevTools, or some other tool?
It's interesting, yeah. Sorry, Jack. I'm butting in all the time. You go first.
Go ahead. No, yeah, I'll go next.
Okay. What I was going to say was accessibility checking. I haven't found a good enough tool yet. I'm on the lookout for one. We're still using, for example, we're relying on our components being checked for accessibility and its usage inside our system at the moment. And then we run checks on the code that we've built, for example, on our website. Then we run an accessibility crawler on that, which creates a report for us. So it's kind of like the way that people were doing it like a year ago. We're still doing that system. And I would love to have an accessibility checker on my design or in Figma when I'm making it. So I'm kind of on the lookout to adjust my own workflow just now, but how we do it in-house, we do the accessibility checks on the components. We do that with contrast and type, etc. Those are the ones that are used to get built, and then we run the crawler over the websites and the apps that we create, and then that gives us the report.
Cool. And I would say the DQ, I've seen that before and I've used it before. They have like accessibility plugins and attachments for Chrome and for Figma. And I would say if you're building in Figma Make and you want to check for accessibility, you could always use that tool to copy the design from Make into Figma Design and then run the accessibility plugins from Figma Design itself. And then you can basically do it based off whatever state you copied from Figma Make into Design. Does that make sense? Okay, cool.
Well, we are to time. We're 3 minutes over. I want to just again say thank you to our panelists, Chrissy, Jacques, and Christian. I think Rudy we got a little more chat action since then. Re-pasted the survey link, but it is there. Maybe you can do it one more time. Also, if you're interested in getting more, especially of Chrissy or Jacques, Chrissy is the instructor in our AI for UX design course. Jacques is participating both in AI prototyping camp as well as vibe coding camp. Christian, you're a mentor both for UX Academy as well as AI for UX design, right?
Correct. Yeah.
So if you take AI for UX design, you might get a double dose. You might end up with Christian as your mentor and Chrissy as the lecturer. But again, thank you for them. If you're interested in our courses, use the links that Rudy dropped, or you can just use Survey 2026, all caps, no spaces. We'll save $150. So go ahead and use that. You will get a recording. Do you guys mind if people connect with you on LinkedIn if they want more?
Yeah.
I love people connecting with me. I'm super nosy though, so I like seeing where people go in their career, what they do. Like I'm one of those people. I am in people's business with their careers and their design.
So connect with Chrissy, but just know that she might stalk your LinkedIn profile. And
Most of your stuff, I'm like, oh, they work there now. That's really cool. Oh, that's really nice. I get genuinely happy seeing how other people are doing in their careers. It's like a little dopamine fix for me. I have issues, Cam.
and
It's what makes you a great mentor with us here at Designlab as well. I posted a bunch of stuff in the chat, so you guys, can scroll back through after we wrap up to find all those links. I also wanted to highlight that some of the key non-AI skill areas that all of our panelists just happened to mention, I promise we did not put them up to this, but they map directly to other courses that Designlab runs as well, and that we have starting soon. And that discount that we shared is applicable to all of our advanced course offerings. It's not just the AI related ones. So if strategic business acumen, if UI and craft mastery, getting more systematic in your design systems, if those are things you're also looking to do in 2026, you can use that same discount that we shared as well. It is going to expire at the end of this month. The deadline to use that discount code is January 31st at midnight Pacific time. So you have a little bit of time to look at our courses. If you want more information about any of them, reach out to the admissions team. We're happy to share more information. But yeah, thanks again, everyone, for being here.
thanks, guys. Thanks, Christian,
Appreciate it.
Jacques, Chrissy.
Thanks, everyone.
Take
Bye.
care, everybody. Bye.